Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Practical Pet Chat. Thanks for joining Lauren and I. We always appreciate spending a few moments with you. And Lauren, today we're going to talk about a topic that I'm sure a lot of folks are dealing with right now, and that is seasoning your pets. Now, no, we're not talking about, your traditional feast seasonings. We are talking about adjusting to the seasons because in wherever you are, conditions have changed. Indoor, outdoor, we've got new things being brought into the home because we've got the holidays, we've got trees, we've got this, we've got that, we've got visitors. And then outside, we've got different weather conditions and the things that we've been doing and that we and our furry ones love so much going out and doing have to get adjusted. Lauren, you live in a much more volatile climate than I do these days. So I'll kick it to you first. How do you season your pets?
A little basil, a little oregano, works every winter. It's funny you said that. We had a tornado touchdown yesterday, and damaged about 100 homes. Not in my immediate area, but I did think about that because I was gone and my dogs were home. There's a lot of things you have to consider for this time of year, depending on where you live. Um, let's take the obvious one. It for most people, it's very cold. Not where you are, not where I'm at, but for a lot of the country, and we have people that listen to us around the world, it's very cold where they're at, snow and ice and those kinds of conditions. And, it's interesting to me that people either think their animals are climatized in some way automatically, or they just throw on a jacket, on their kid. Conversely, I've seen, dogs walking around like the Michelin Man. And it's like, oh my gosh. So I think that it reflects a lot on how the human feels about the weather. And I think we need to look at the animal involved. Every year when I had my store, I used to post how to make an outdoor shelter, an outdoor bed for cats or, any wildlife that needed a little bit of a shelter from the cold. And I love that idea. It's an easy thing to do with, an old styrofoam ice chest kind of thing. And they really are inexpensive to do. And you can throw them out every year because, they don't cost really anything. But when you're talking about your own animals, I think you need to look at your conditions. You need to look at where are you? Are you walking in the city? Are you in a more rural area? Because they're both very different. For sure, in the city, you have to think about de-icing. You have to think about treatments that are on the sidewalks and the roads. You have to think about any number of those things that are going to affect not only your animal's paw pads, but whatever is on your paws ends up in your kid, right? Because they lick their paws. You have to think about is can you have you taken the preliminary steps to get your kid adjusted to booties? If you're somewhere so cold that it's in your animal's best interest to have booties on when they go outside, you can't just spring those on in one day without preparation because your kid's not going to have it. They're just not going to do it.
You can
They won't
do it
understand it.
because I've
You
seen a lot
can.
of it. I've seen a lot of videos
It's
that
hilarious.
yeah, and you do get that robotic like what is that? Um,
Yes.
but to your point, yes, if you want to do it pleasantly for everybody, yeah, ease them into that.
Yeah. Because it does cause a little bit of consternation and stress on the animal until they're used to it. But you also have to think about your particular animal. What kind of coat do they have?
Yeah,
What are they built for? Beyond what they're built for, they are somewhat climatized to their area, right? So if you're coming off of a pretty hot summer and maybe a tepid fall before your first snow and ice storm, then their coats may not have had time to adjust to that temperature change either. So you have to look at that. You can put so much clothing on your animal that you make them too hot. And you need to be aware that if they're shaking and shivering, hypothermia is an issue. The same thing's for people. All the issues that come with those volatile weather conditions that affect us can affect them as well.
Yeah. I like what you talked about too. We talk about the environment changes, and there are a lot more things as you are getting out on those walks, even if it's not snow on the ground, ice on the ground. What's happened is what was in that area you're walking has oftentimes bubbled up. So the different chemicals that we use for our cars and all the rest of that, antifreeze, the treatments that the roads are given to help them for winterizing, all of that stuff can get up in between the paws in particular. And to me, this is that time of year, more so than ever. You've really got to be washing those paws off. But not just washing them, drying them, because it's not like the summer heat where it will dry quickly. And I hear from folks more often, it seems like in the winter that they're having these paw issues than they are in the summer. And so I think that is like number one. But here's the weird part too is every year I get a story of some tragic situation because someone was using a space heater, or they were using one of those old time furnaces, and it's been cold the rest of the year. It hasn't
Mhm.
been on. It's not anything I couldn't bump into, I needed to worry about. And a pet will inevitably, and their reaction is just like ours, which is ouch, and they're scrambling. And so the unfortunate propensity to have something get knocked over, et cetera, is really high. And when we're talking about heat and flames, just not something you want to take any chances on. And I know a lot of you out there are going, Rob, that's an obvious one. And yet we still have those stories. So that's why we got to talk about this. The other thing I want to talk about too is, and I love that you mentioned this, it's seasonal, right? We're bringing in different things. It's not just the plants that can be dangerous or the tree with the glass ornaments and all the rest of that stuff. Um, I don't know. Well, I do know why. We all like to generate those smells that take us back to when we were kids. And I'm from the Chicago area, so I love the snow day smell and the fresh pines and all that. That's not something either we're typically overloading our houses with.
Mhm.
And so all of a sudden it's like, wow, we got the candles going, we got a fresh tree in here. There is a lot of new things in the environment. And I'm a big proponent of get down to your pet's level and make sure you are looking at it from their point of view and their eyes. What things catch your eye as a, ooh, that's interesting, or ooh, hey, let me go play with that? Because they're definitely going to go explore that. They're curious by nature, dog, cat, etc. This is their environment that has now had a significant change, and that is going to drive that curiosity and exploration throughout this. So I think there's a lot of different things that as you're looking you have to try and take care of, but at the same time it can still be a wonderful wonderful experience. The joy, and we've all seen the videos, but the joy that I see in some pets in getting to run out into the snow and experience that um, is, it's just a special time of the year. But bundle them up. I like that you said too, what's their coat like and all that. I mean, this is that one time of year where your closet full of sweaters for your pets really comes in, and people cannot give you grief in most areas. Um, and I think from the standpoint of it shouldn't deter you from exploring, but it should be, you got to be aware and you got to watch what your pet does as you're getting outdoors at this time of year.
Yeah. There's a lot of, I mean, in my area, when I lived in your state, I didn't have to worry about, pine needles and those kinds of things. And those are really sharp and they get into paw pads, they get caught in the coat, pine cones, all the seeds, all the nuts that are on the ground. I live in a very wooded environment now and I love it. It's beautiful, but at the same time, it's really different from what, any of my kids would have been used to. And I think you just need to be cognizant of how they're taking it in. I like that you brought up about some of the scents and that kind of thing. Remember that your dog, especially, smells in layers.
Yes.
And some of that can be so overwhelming. We bring in the pumpkin this and the apple cider potpourri that, and, we love it. And, I have a dog that has allergies like her mom. And she just will have these sneezing fits. And I'm like,
Mm.
oh, bummer. That needs to go. Because you got to be cognizant that just because you like it doesn't mean that they're tolerating it well. So there's a lot of things that come into seasoning your animal that have to do with inside, outside, the entire environment, their coats, their reactions, their perceptions, the sensory overload of all of it, and how you need to plan to adjust and adjust on the fly for all of those things.
Yeah, I also think too in that seasoning part, right? That's a really good point. Is your senior pets as well typically feel this change in the weather much more, very much like adults do, where, oh, I can tell that the weather's changing. Your pets can sense that as well. So if you've got a senior pet and they're maybe not moving as quick, it may not be something long term or severe. It
Mhm.
may be just like the rest of us, we're feeling our age.
That's what I was
And
gonna say.
yeah, hey, it takes a little bit more warming up before we go and do certain things. Um, and they get in there too. That it's like, hey, wow, we're all sitting there. We got the fireplace going. We got our favorite Christmas movies. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. Belle seems to tolerate it. But they'll again remember, folks. They're taking our energy, right? So it may not be, I get a lot of folks that say, oh, I don't know what it is, but every winter, my pets just seem to go into hibernation. I'm like, well, they're not bears. Um, but they are certainly feeling the environment, feeling the energy. And sure, who doesn't want to be in the place that they're most comfortable? And by the way, you're moving a little bit slower too during that time of year, right? You're doing more sitting, you're doing more relaxing.
You're under blankets
You're on the
and things like that.
blankets.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is
They're
like,
they're under the blanket with you. Yeah.
yeah, well, Belle just takes the blanket. But
Oh,
that's
there
okay.
you go.
I'm from Chicago. I don't need a blanket, as she reminds me. But yeah, I will tell you, it's an interesting time of year. And I think that for a lot of the folks too, um, and I know we'll talk about this in an upcoming episode, is just that notion of we got to stay active. We got to stay active. You don't have to stay active outside.
Right.
And just because they've got a fur coat does not mean it is the fur coat that is going to keep them warm. They're not getting the extra bundle up. Maybe you are. Maybe you're even wearing your snow boots. But unless you're, doing the same for your pups in particular, that cold still impacts them. And that can get to them really quick. And I see people going out on these long hikes, and I'm like, whew, that is maybe not the breed I would try and do that with. Sure, if you got a husky, you got a Malamute, absolutely. Get on out there. I got my
Great
Great Pyrenees,
Pyrenees. Yep.
yes, of course. But there are plenty of others that I see. I see your Instagram reels, everybody. Even though I don't want to watch them all, they're so darn cute. Um, But I do sometimes worry where it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, we're going on a 3 hour, hike. And I'm like, the snow is up to the dog's neck, which means that is, probably a little bit overwhelming. So have some common sense. I know you have that. You wouldn't do anything to put your pets in harm. Um, but it's the awareness. We get caught up in the season, we get caught up in being busy. We're charged up by their excitement, they're charged up by our excitement. Just take that extra beat to make sure wherever you are, indoors, outdoors, and again, I still see people taking their pets into the stores, the big box stores, and I'm so torn because I love that you can do that, but it is a really frenetic time to have your pets in these stores. And so, yeah, season your pets. I'm partial to, I don't mind basil. Basil's not a bad one. I like mint though at this time of year. I'm an old sucker. Remember those like green candies that our grandparents used to have? Oh my gosh. Wow, I'm really dating myself here. But speaking of dates, I know we are coming up to the end of the year. We've got a couple more episodes left. So I do want to make sure we give people a quick heads up. We're going to do our last episode of this year. Practical Pet Chat will be December 14th. And we'll be back in January on the 11th of January. So I'm going to hand over to you that last little bit of wisdom of seasoning your pets for your pet parents, for your guests. Any last little tips that you would throw out to them?
Me?
Yeah, yeah.
The one thing that we didn't cover is dogs with long hair, doodles and things like that who go out in the snow. For pet parents who aren't prepared for what that's going to take to comb out afterwards, please don't take your long-haired kids out into the snow and bring them inside and let them dry normally without making sure you comb them out thoroughly so that they don't get matted or pelted, that kind of thing. And just think of them like the kid that they are. You gotta address every little thing when you get them dressed and then undressed and warmed up inside. But those coats, man, unless you plan on shaving your kid down come January,
Yeah.
you're going to have to be sure you address the coat.
That's a great call, and I'm going to actually steal the last word here. I apologize, but you just hit on something really important. It's not just their coats and clothing, it's your coats and clothing too, right? Because you're going out, you're walking, you're using the sidewalks that have been salted, and you're going through all that stuff. So also take a look at where you're putting your stuff, making sure you're cleaning your stuff. I know a lot of us out there are very diligent about what we do for our pets, sometimes forget hey, we should be doing the same thing to what we're wearing. So that being said, if you've got a great tip, please send us an email. Lorin does not get enough emails. Send that to practicalpetchat@gmail.com. She will read that. And I don't want to promise in the new year I'll read more of them, Lorin, but we do appreciate all the suggestions, all the ideas. Thanks for listening to us on your favorite podcast network, watching our vidcasts on your favorite video network. We really appreciate you joining us here. Have a great week, and we'll see you on the next Practical Pet Chat.
Bye, guys.
The content of this podcast is for informational purposes only. It is not intended as, nor should it be construed as, professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment for your pets. Always seek the advice of a qualified veterinarian with any questions you may have regarding your pet's health or medical condition. Never disregard professional veterinary advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. The hosts and the guests of this podcast are not liable for any actions taken based on the information shared during these episodes. Any reliance on the information provided is solely at your own risk. Copyright 2025 Practical Pet Chat, all rights reserved. Unauthorized duplication, distribution, or reproduction of any content from this podcast, including but not limited to audio, scripts, and show notes, is prohibited without prior written consent. The opinions and views expressed by the host and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Practical Pet Chat.